Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name's Lauren. First, I'll start off by saying Happy New Year. This is my first video back and I've decided to start the year by making some dungarees. I've had this corduroy material for a while, and since we're in another lockdown, I thought I may as well use it as it's good dungaree weather. I started by drafting out the main front and back pieces to my trousers for the dungarees. To create my pattern for my dungarees, I drew out a rectangle which was the length of my waist down to my ankles, and then the width was a quarter of the largest part of my hips. I then measured down from the edge of the top of the rectangle 35 centimeters and made a mark, and then from that point I measured 5 centimeters out. I created a curve to connect these 2 points and then drew a straight line from the outer point of the curve to the corner of the rectangle where my ankles were, and this gave me the inside leg piece. I created the back piece in exactly the same way, but instead of measuring out 5 centimeters, I measured out 10 centimeters and then was able to create a larger curve. I laid the front and the back pieces right sides together and then sewed up the outside seam before I was able to attach my pocket. I created the front pocket so they would be visible on my dungarees, and to do this I drew a rectangle and then removed about a quarter of the rectangle using a curved line. I did decide to line my pocket with some cotton fabric, which I just cut out the same shape, placed them right sides together, and then sewed along the curved line and flipped them wrong sides together and top stitched that line. I laid the trousers out flat and put the pocket on top of the front piece of the trouser leg, and then unpicked the section where the pocket needed to be sandwiched in after I'd lined it all up. I also tucked the very bottom section of the pocket up, so when it came to sewing there weren't any fiddly bits for seam allowance showing on the pocket. Once I'd done both pockets, I sewed the side seams of the inside of the legs and then put one trouser leg inside the other, right sides together, making sure my little pocket wings didn't get in the way, and then sewed along the curved seam, leaving space for a zipper at the back. I didn't use an invisible zipper, so it was just a case of putting in a normal zipper. There's lots of tutorials out there, so I definitely recommend watching one if you're not too sure how to do that. Once the zipper was in place, I was able to then put the trousers on, but I had them on inside out, and then I was able to pin the darts that needed to be put in to make the trousers fit my waist nicely, and then I sewed those darts in place. Once I was happy with the fit of my trousers and the darts, I was able to then sew my pockets. I started with the front pockets and I tucked the seam allowance in underneath, pinned it in place. I added a small pleat to the bottom of the pocket to give it a bit more space when it was in use, and then I sewed along the edge and secured it all in place. To create the back pockets and the pocket for the dungaree top section, I just used the measurements from a pair of jeans that I had, and I think this was the best way to do it, and I also added a little seam allowance to all of my measurements before cutting everything out. I folded over the top seam allowance and did 2 lines of stitching to hold it down. I then folded and pinned the pocket in place, making sure the seam allowance was on the inside and making sure that the pockets were equally spaced from the centre of the zipper, and also that they were at the same height, as you will see them clearly from the back if they're in the wrong place. I then did 2 lines of stitching here. My stitches aren't necessarily the neatest, but I was quite happy with how they turned out. My pockets are potentially a little bit too high on a normal pair of trousers, but I think that they're okay. They will do. I cut out a second piece of the waistband out of the matching cotton that I'd used for my pockets and sandwiched the trousers between the 2 fabrics, facing them right sides together. And then I also decided to have a button on my waistband, so I had a little bit of extra length for the overlap. And then I sewed straight along the bottom and the very end of the overlapped piece to secure the trousers and the waistband together. Once I'd attached the waistband, I just top stitched all the way around to make sure it stood up in place, and then I took some measurements and worked out how big I wanted my front panel to be. I measured the width that it would be at the very top and the width it would be at the bottom, and then also how tall I wanted it to be. That made it easy to cut out and work out the sort of diagonal line that's at either side. These measurements are totally changeable depending on how you want your dungarees to look, but I think my dungarees were about 21 centimetres high. I had about 20 centimetres at the top and then maybe 35 or 40 centimetres at the bottom. I cut the same piece out of my cotton lining. I attached the pocket to the corduroy front the same way I'd done with the back pockets. And then I sewed my lining and my main piece right sides together, and before doing that I wanted to make sure that the buckles didn't rip. I just decided to use an extra square of the corduroy to create a bit more strength in my layers of fabric. And then I turned them inside out and top stitched around the side, top and other side. So to create my strap, I decided to just go with the method like a piece of bias binding. So I folded in the 2 seam allowances and then folded it in half and just top stitched along both edges to hold it in place. So attaching the hardware, I don't have the best footage showing how I somehow managed to thread all the pieces up, so I definitely recommend watching a video because it sort of just suddenly came together after lots of trial and error. For the actual button bits that are attached onto the fabric, I placed them down and marked out where I wanted them to be, and then I used my seam ripper just to create a little hole in all of the layers of the fabric. And they came with this little arrow piece, so I pushed the arrow piece through the hole that I'd created, and then I haven't got a clip of it, but I used some sort of a clamp or hammer type thing to make sure they were properly squidged together and there was no way of the 2 pieces coming apart. Then I was pretty much done. I did add a button at the very end to the overlap where my zip was, and then I also just cuffed the bottom of my trouser legs. I ended up having a bit of a cropped fit, so from my mistake I'd probably go a little longer in length just to be safe. However, I don't mind the crop fit for me, and I did line it and hand sew in some of the lining as well, so then if I wanted to turn up my trousers in the summer, then I had a little bit of that blue cotton poking through. But apart from that, I was done. So let's see how it turned out. Once I'd sewn together my straps and I had finished the hardware, I was then ready to put everything into the waistband. So similar to how I'd done the straps, I folded in the seam allowance, pinned everything in place with the waistband, and then just took out the pins and put in the straps in the front piece, making sure they were sort of straight. No, making sure they were straight, not sort of straight. And then top stitched everything in place. Despite the mistakes here and there, I'm really chuffed with how my dungarees have turned out. I definitely am really looking forward to wearing them, and I reckon I'll be able to wear them all the way through to mid-spring time, which is very exciting. And I definitely want to have a go at working with corduroy some more. I'd like to make a pair of trousers as well, in the same way that I've made these trousers. So I might do a video just on making the trousers. But I'm really chuffed with how they look, and I really like the fit. And yeah, have a go. I'm really happy with them. I love the lining detail. I really like having a bright coloured lining in them, so if you lean forwards and the pocket shows a bit, or the inside of the dungaree show a bit, you get a bright colour compared to the dark corduroy that I'd picked. So if you do have extra fabric, I totally recommend that. I think it makes it look really fun. And yeah, I'm just really chuffed with this project and how it's turned out. And it's a good start to the year. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!